Most runners don't get injured during the marathon. They show up to the start line already broken, dealing with nagging injuries, aches, and pains. I'm Dr. Peralta, physical therapist and run coach, and I've spent almost 10 years helping runners who, fell victim to the traditional approach to training for marathons, who ended up getting hurt. And then they were in my chairs seeking physical therapy because it's like, oh man, you got to help me, doc. I have a race coming up. What I'm about to share is a system I use with runners 40 and up who want to run the full marathon, 26.2 miles, without, being one of the statistics of being an injured runner. And here's what nobody tells you that most marathon plans are designed for folks in their 20s with unlimited time on their hands, with unlimited recovery capacity. And this mismatch, right? These high volume plans, aging bodies, and the lack of strength work leads to this really high injury rate. Now, the numbers vary. Some stats have them like a 50%, 80%. Heck, I've even seen like this New York Times piece, like 9 out of 10 runners have to sit out of training every year due to injury. And the thing is that what many folks don't understand is that they think, okay, running, it's easy enough. Just put on a pair of shoes and go for a run. But they don't realize that running alone is a one-dimensional sport. It's not a complete sport all on itself. Yes, running is a great sport. It could be fun. It can have many benefits for your cardiovascular health, your mental health benefits. But if you're not doing things to support your running, especially strength work, oftentimes your body's going to break down. All right. And what many people don't realize is that resting alone doesn't get rid of the injury. Sure, you may need some temporary or relative rest to get some relief for let's say it was a bone stress injury. But when you pick up the mileage again, if your body's not strong enough, it's just going to break down again. See, the real test is whether your body can actually tolerate the demands of running. So many injuries are not just an issue with the pain. The pain is just a symptom, right? They're usually capacity problems, right? The actual problem, the root causes usually have to do with your body's capacity or its ability to handle the demands of running. So if your body can't handle the demands, it's going to break down, right? Again, the pain, the knee pain you might be feeling, the ankle pain is just a symptom of either too much training, too much, too soon, and that your body broke down and it finally you're presenting with this symptom. But in and of itself, the symptom is not the cause of the pain. It's actually, again, the root cause is this mismatch in load to capacity. And when we look at load to capacity, right, it could be the speed, the miles, ramping up the miles too much, changing the terrain, too much hill work. Maybe you change the footwear all of a sudden. You maybe start one of these super shoes. And then capacity, right? You're not getting enough sleep recovery. You're not have strong enough tissues or mobile enough tissues. You're not managing stress properly. You're not eating enough, fueling properly. All this stuff can lead to a mismatch between capacity and load. So who's this for, right? This is for 3 types of runners I created this video for. Yeah, your beginners, runners making a comeback, and especially runners over 40 who keep getting hurt. And what you walk away with is a framework on how to train for a marathon, stay safe, and train for longevity. And some of these things I'm talking about, some of the steps that include strength training, the run program itself, of course, mobility. And by the end of this, you know exactly how to train without becoming, a patient who will have to go to the knee guy in town or your sports medicine doctor or gal. Right? Like, oh no, I got hurt. Well, let's avoid getting hurt in the first place, right? There's a saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So if we could prevent these injuries from happening in the first place, you could go across that marathon finish line and not, again, having to be all in tears and upset because, you waited too long and then this nagging ache or pain blew up on you and become something that you couldn't manage properly. So what I recommend, to run for a marathon, you don't have to train every day of the week. And in fact, as you get older, you actually need more days of recovery, right? And, if you're an everyday runner, right, you're in your 40s, 50s, or so forth, I take it your job, your full-time job does not to be a professional runner, right? People a lot of times try to emulate the plans of professional or really competitive marathon runners, but these competitive runners are often running 70 plus miles a week, 100 miles a week, because it's their full-time job. For you, you're probably working around, again, you have your job outside of running, you have a family, maybe you have kids, you have a life outside of running. And as you get older, you're going to need more time for recovery. Your body doesn't bounce back from those high mileage or high volume plans as it once did when you were younger, right? Unless you were a competitive runner yourself for your whole life, chances are, if you're an everyday runner, like, a recreational runner, your body can't withstand those really high mileages. And then you have to make more time for recovery. And that's why I recommend what's the minimum effective dose that will still get you to cross the finish line of a marathon without breaking down. And that's why I'm a big fan of low volume marathon plans, essentially like 30 miles per week, 35 miles per week, or even 40 miles per week or so. But you really don't have to go into the 70 miles per week plus if you're not trying to chase some Olympic qualifying time or some elite qualifying time. And in fact, you could even run a respectable marathon time on 3 runs per week, like a sub 4 hour marathon, sub 3 hour marathon. So a 3 run per week framework. So most runners, 40 years old and up, but what I recommend, a long run, a quality run, whether it's a tempo run, a speed run, and then an easy recovery run. Now, if you're someone who likes doing 2 quality runs, you could do that. So another option could be the long run, a tempo run, and a track workout. Right? But for most people, I like having an easy run in there as well. So the 10% rule, right? There's a classic 10% rule that increase your mileage by no more than 10%. But I like actually ramping up over the course of 3 weeks. 3 weeks, you ramp up. 1 week, kind of scale it back down. And this rhythm is going to build up your capacity without breaking you down. So every week or so, you're going to start increasing the mileage for step by step, right? For those few weeks. And then you kind of deload and then you ramp back up. And then you keep going higher and higher until you reach, your target for mileage or long run distance that you're building for it. And the long run is really what I look at. Obviously, you can look at the total miles per week, but also look at the long run impact. Because one of the biggest factors for injury risk is having a long run that jumps too much. Let's say your longest long run was 8 miles, going from like 8 to 16 miles. That's like you're in just a week, in a 2 week period. That's a wild, big jump in the long run. Like a smarter thing would be slowly increase the long run mileage. So maybe going from 8 to 9 to 10. You like drop down to let's say going back down to 8 again, and then you pick it up back then from 9, 10, 11, and so forth. There's variations, but just getting a general example there. You just don't want to have a big jump in long run mileage in the past 30 days. You can see one of my athletes here. I'm kind of ramping up the long run, and this is like a 2 week block here for one of my runners in her 60s. So the long run, again, doesn't have to be 20 plus miles, especially if you're a beginner. Like, let's say your time on your feet, because you run a pace where it's a bit slower pace. You're just more of a beginner runner, and your long run might take you 3 hours, right? There's no need to be out there more than 3 hours. It's okay to cap your long runs at 3 hours, especially if you're not running those faster paces where you could finish a long run in 2 hours, right? Because you don't want to exhaust yourself so much on a long run that you treat it like a race and then you need like 2 or 3 weeks to recover from. See, the marathon itself for many beginner runners is often your longest run. Some people think that they're undertrained, but if you train appropriately, it's okay to not actually run the full distance of 26.2 mile during your marathon buildup, right? Training is about arriving healthy and not proving that you could already run the distance. And if you're a bit fitter, sure, you can do a 20-mile long run or a 25-mile long run. But for most runners, you don't have to do a 25-mile long run, right, to prove that you're fit enough to do a full marathon. Again, for many beginners, oftentimes they're already spending so much time on their feet that they don't have to, force themselves to be out there for like 6 hours or so. And if you are a complete beginner, another thing I forgot to mention is the run-walk method. I'm a big fan of doing run-walk method. And in fact, you do run-walk method 3 times per week, and then cross-train the other days of the week, whether it's biking or just simply walking. Maybe you walk for 30 minutes, you walk for an hour to help further build up your aerobic fitness, especially if you're a complete beginner, where even walking will be enough of a stimulus to stimulate your aerobic system, in addition to then doing the run-walk method. And there's different run-walk protocols out there, but you could do a run-walk method for the entire marathon, for the entire marathon training block. And if you're a complete beginner, I do recommend following like a 18-week build or even a 20-week build, especially making sure build up your base. And if you haven't run a marathon before, hey, make sure you could build up to do a half marathon. I strongly recommend going, from 5K to 10K to 15K to half marathon and so forth to gradually build up. But I know some people like to jump ahead. Like, I want to do the full marathon as my very first race. At the very least, make sure you build up your body, build up its base, so you could tolerate, running close to like a half marathon distance, at least. But again, I mentioned this. I know some people will ignore this and go from couch to marathon. Again, that's not what I recommend, but at least be smart about it. Strength training is a non-negotiable. So many runners will skip this, and it is a big mistake. Right? 'Cause many people think that running alone this is going to strengthen their legs. It's not, right? It's not a substitute for strength training. And people will point to the exception, like, I heard so and so, my friend, or this running influencer who just runs alone or does like no strength training whatsoever. But the thing is, that's a mistake, and the exception is not the rule. Although there might be some folks who claim to get away with it, oftentimes they're doing some type of strength work. They just don't consider it lifting weights. Maybe they're doing calisthenics, body weight, or like minimal strength work. But strength training, it can be in different modalities. It doesn't always have to be, barbells. It could be dumbbell, it could be bands, kettlebell, body weight, etc. But what people don't realize is that running is a high impact sport. Every time your foot hits the ground, it's 2 to 3 times your body weight through the leg. And if you're not strong enough to handle that load, your body's going to break down, whether it's your knee, your ankle, your hip. Eventually something breaks down. You're just gambling. You're just playing with fire. As you get older, your chances of injury start to increase, especially if you're not doing any strength work. And although you think, oh, I'm just going to rest, I'm just going to take a few weeks of rest, it can calm the pain temporarily. But rest alone does not make your knee stronger or any other body part for that matter. Right? And if you think about when your foot hits the ground, many people think, oh, I'm just 150 pounds. It's just my 150-pound body. But if you're a 150-pound runner, what your body actually sees is anywhere from like 300 to 450 pounds of force every time your foot hits the ground. It is equivalent almost of like doing like a single leg squat jump with a barbell on your back, right? So let's say you have like a 225-pound barbell on your back, and imagine trying to run with that barbell or jump on a single leg, and imagine now repeating that for thousands of steps over the course, not just 1 mile, but 26.2 miles. That's a lot of stress going through your body. And if it's not strong enough, you can see why so many people start hurting around mile 20. Their body starts to break down. It's not just a nutrition fueling issue. It's also that the fact that the body's just not strong enough to take that beating of those repetitive strikes out through the legs. So what are the benefits of strength training? So when you properly strength training, you get a couple things, right? One, when you do proper strength training, I'm not talking about just general stuff. I'm talking about runner-specific strength work. You can improve your postural stability, your trunk kinematics. And so your trunk strength or your postural strength can reduce energy expenditure and reduce wasted energy from like side-to-side movement or rotational movements. When you do proper strength training for your tendons, you can improve tendon stiffness, not just at the Achilles tendon, but also at the quad tendon, glute tendon, hamstring tendon. When you do the proper strength work, again, this might require some power training as well. I'll talk about that. But stiffer tendons allow for lesser shortening length and velocity of active muscles during the stretch shortening cycle, which could result in less energy expenditure. The other thing that happens is you get a better co-activation of your muscle groups, right? Strength training improves motor unit recruitment and coordination. Therefore, the relative proportion of active muscle is reduced, right? You're not using as much energy to do the same amount of work, so you're more efficient, right? Decreased activation of the antagonist muscles during the swing and propulsive phase of running can attenuate the unnecessary energy expended. That means you're not wasting as much energy because you're more efficient. Relative load, right? Strength training improves your maximal strength when done properly. And in stronger muscles, some maximal contractions performed while running might recruit smaller and more efficient motor units. This also brings me to a side note, is that so many people, either they don't strength train at all, or they'll do very lightweight and high repetition. Like, oh, I'm just going to grab these 2-pound dumbbells, do it for high repetition because I need to build up my cardio. No, strength training should be done in a modality of ways, but you also should be doing heavy lifting. If you ignore heavy lifting altogether, that's a big mistake. You're not going to build maximal strength with 2-pound dumbbells unless 2 pounds is a maximum for you. Unless you're completely deconditioned, the average person is not going to be fully fatigued from a 2-pound squat, right? You're going to have to do, heavy lifting to, actually start developing maximal strength. The other benefit of strength training is improving your vertical oscillation, right? Your rate of force development increases following power training or explosive training, right? Greater RFD, rate of force development, shortens the interval required to produce the force required to sustain your body mass during ground contact, as when your foot hits the ground, and potentially reducing wasted energy vertically, right? It's like kind of this up and down bounce. Sometimes you see we're just wasting too much energy going up and down, which they should be directing the energy going straight ahead, linear, right? So we're going forward. And yes, there's some energy. Sometimes you have to go side to side if you're, traversing obstacles or terrain or other runners on your way. But essentially, it should be like straight ahead running. So when you do proper strength training, it makes you more efficient. So training recommendations, it could be, it doesn't have to be barbells, but it could be a combination of modalities, whether it's barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell, bands, chains, body weight, etc. Do recommend Some days you do heavy lifting, where it could be high loads, greater than 80% of your 1 rep max. It might look like 3 rep max squat or 5 rep max deadlift, right? Fewer repetitions, 3 to 5 reps per the set. And then you may, want to rest like 2 to 3 minutes between sets of the exercises, especially doing heavy. However, this infographic says reps to non-repetition failure. I would argue it depends on the exercise you're doing. If it's a smaller muscle group, let's say you're doing quadriceps, like leg extension, you could go to failure to momentary muscular fatigue. In that case, I think doing 15 to 20 reps, but to momentary muscular fatigue. And for many runners, I actually rather do a single set, one set, 8 to 12 rep max. And yes, you could do one set of 6 rep max with like a heavy set of squat or something, but you do have to know what you're doing. If you're not sure what you're doing in the weight room, get some guidance, get some help, because you could also get injured lifting incorrectly. The other thing is you want to do explosive training. This is things like speed squats, speed deadlift, speed split squat, or Bulgarian split squat, like, really quickly, where maybe you jump up from the squat, or you just do it quickly, or a quick box squat. So this could be like maybe 60% of your 1 rep max, high velocity, and maybe you only do like 10 reps or 4 reps, but you're doing, a couple of sets for that. And you may want to rest 2 or 3 minutes in between that. And then there's also explosive training. This is where like no load or minimal load, where you do like jump squats or box jumps, where you jump onto a box of, let's say, maybe 20 inches or 30 inches, depending on your ability level. They're usually done quickly, short contact on the ground, right? Like you're jumping up and down quickly, jumping over hurdles. Even jump rope actually can be a version of plyometric training, or even just jumping with your body weight, just squat jumping up and down quickly. Maybe you do 30 contacts, maybe 30 squat jumps, or even 40 squat jumps. It could be broken up, but you may be doing like 3x10 or 4x10. If you're a complete beginner, you might just do pogo hops, maybe a minute worth of pogo hops at 30 seconds, and you build up from there. In general, you want to space out your strength training from intense running sessions, right? Let's say you like to do on the same day, so maybe you run in the morning, and then maybe you do your strength and power work in the evening, right? Or you pair your strength training with your cross training, especially if you're doing the 3 runs per week framework. Maybe 3 days a week you'll run, but then 2 or 3 days a week you'll do the strength training and power training paired with cross training, or on a standalone day, depending on your schedule and what works best for you and your preferences. But you still want to make sure you progress it. Same thing when you're running, how you progress your long run. If you're building up for a marathon, you also want to progress your strength training and explosive training, so you're getting stronger, right? Whether it's every week or every 2 weeks. Sometimes older runners can only progress every 2 weeks. That's fine. But essentially, you want to get better, whether it's 1% better, 5% better. You still want to strive to either lift heavier, do more repetition, etc. You don't want to just stagnate with your strength work and explosive training. At the very bare minimum, I recommend at least 2 days per week of strength training. So if you're doing the single set that I recommend, it should only take you 20 or 30 minutes. You actually could do a full body routine in about 30 minutes or so, even including a warm up. Right? Maybe one day you do like heavy lower body emphasis, but you can still do full body, but maybe part of the focus of that day might be more heavy body work. And then on another day, you might want to work on like your hamstrings, your posterior chain, your glutes, your core. Maybe do higher repetition work on another day, work more muscular endurance or more explosive training on another day. Right? But essentially, if you're running 3 days per week, but doing zero strength work, you're building a house with no foundation. So some exercises I recommend, there's different variations. This is a sample workout, right? You could do single leg squats, step down deadlifts, split squats, farmer's carries, Turkish get up or kettlebell get up, calf raises. You can see this kind of screenshots, some sample workouts I've done some of my runners in the past. Step down, lateral step up, lateral lunges, Bulgarian split squat, lunges, single leg box squat, seated calf raises, Nordic curl for the hamstring, reverse Nordic for the quads, squat to squat thruster, single leg deadlift, two-legged deadlift, right? A barbell, kettlebell. So different variations, but just giving you guys a sample workout there. And you can see I like doing one set, but some people like to do a warm-up. It's okay if you want to do a warm-up set, you can. But if you want to be time efficient, most folks can get the benefits of strength training with a single set. You don't have to be out there in the gym training, 3 sets of 10, 4 sets of 10. Now, if you really love it, you just love the gym, you could do it that way. Just know it's going to take you longer. You might be in the gym for like an hour or so. And for some folks, when they train too much strength training, like, they're out there an hour and a half, 2 hours in the gym, it's going to take away from the running. That's why I'm a big fan of just doing single sets of training, momentary muscle fatigue. You get most of the benefits of strength training and can still benefit your running without detracting from your running, and also improve with injury prevention side of things. I also want to give some caveats, some caution, words of wisdom. As we get older, we start losing muscle mass, sarcopenia, right? Strength training is the only thing that fights it. Again, you don't need to be in the gym, strength training 5 days a week, right? 2 to 3 days a week. Progressive strength training, overloading, that's it. You can do the single set failure to what I recommend, efficient and effective. And when you look at sarcopenia, people don't realize what that means. It's actually you start losing muscle mass. So you can see in a young, healthy muscle, this imaging here, you can see this cross-section of the thigh. You can imagine the quadriceps, the hamstring muscles of that, the thigh muscle there. When it's healthy, that muscle mass takes up most of the image there. But as you start getting sarcopenia, you see the muscle starts to shrivel up. It starts to get smaller. You start getting atrophy, right? This age-related atrophy, lost muscle mass, and it really starts to speed up at the age of 50, and then 70, it really accelerates. And that's why, even if you're in your 40s, it's very important to start strength training so you could offset that and just don't start losing muscle mass. Another thing that happens is losing bone density. Also happens in your 40s, you start losing bone density. That means bone mass. And normal bone, right? The bones are kind of thick, put together, right? This is a microscopic kind of view, a zoomed in view. But if you have osteoporosis or osteopenia, big holes start to form in the bone. You got to see this. It looks like Swiss cheese, and the hole starts getting bigger and bigger. The bone starts getting brittle. The bone starts getting weaker. And the worst case scenario is actually some people ended up getting fractures just from a simple fall, or even just from bending over because the bone is so weak, and get osteoporotic as when they get like 70 years old, just because they didn't do any strength training to build up the bone density. And then proper eating, calcium, vitamin D, proper nutrition is also very important as well. So it's very important to do quality strength training to offset both sarcopenia and osteopenia and osteoporosis. Especially, so if you start laying the foundation now with strength training and proper nutrition, you could build up the insurance in your body. So as you get older, you don't have to succumb to these things, right? So be smart about it. So load management, what actually load means? Load means your mileage, intensity, hills, life stress. And most runners only track the mileage, but running is a high impact sport. And load can come from not just the run itself, right? People just think of a sport, but also your sleep, the stress, nutrition, right? Total training stress. Your body doesn't know the difference between work stress and workout stress. It's all load, right? People don't realize that, right? Fueling, hydration, the weather, terrain, life stress, work stress, family stress, relationship stress, other stuff that you think is just psychological can actually stress your body. And then that could cause you to not get quality sleep. And then you start getting sleep deprivation, your mindset, all these things, all these factors play a role in how you show up for yourself, for running, how healthy you are. And if these things start going out of whack, even if you're consistent when you're running, but you're stressed out all the time, you're not sleeping right, you're not eating right, your body can start breaking down and actually can increase your risk of injury. Even though you might be doing the exercise, the strength training, the running work, your body can still break down because these other factors weren't properly addressed. So when it comes to running, right, people are like, oh, but what are the factors that determine? I call it the load levers. Volume, how much mileage you're putting per week, the long run distance, the intensity, right? How hard, right? The volume is how much, the frequency, how often, how many days of the week you're running. You could push one lever at a time, right? You could progress at one at a time. But if you push two and you're rolling those, push all three, this is where the running is like, does too much, too soon, too fast, where they, I'm going to increase the mileage. I'm going to increase the intensity. I'm going to increase the frequency. And then you end up you start breaking down. You might be fine week 1, then week 2, but then week 3, boom, something gives up. And then that's when you're in the treatment tab. You go into my office like, I need help. I need physical therapy, right? So a better thing I like to tell runners is the acute chronic workload ratio, right? Simple version, your body can handle 10 to 15% more load than it's used to. But if you jump 30% in a week, your injury risk skyrockets, right? That's what I talked about earlier, that in the 30-day window, you don't want to have a long run that jumps up more than doubles, right? You want to go 30% increase or 50% increase, right? That's why cramming your marathon training in 8 weeks doesn't work. You just space it out. I recommend at least 16 weeks, but even better, 18 weeks if you're more a beginner. Right? Your tissues adapt slower than your cardiovascular system. You're like, but my heart and lungs are doing great. But if your joints, your tendons, your cartilage is not adapting as quickly, and it starts breaking down. And then when it comes for the marathon itself, right, when you get close to race day, you should be doing a taper. Right? Your most important week of your training is often the one where you do the least, where the taper is 2 to 3 weeks of reducing your volume while maintaining some of the intensity. And a common taper mistake is doing too little or trying to train too much, trying to go too hard, and going in flat. So here's a taper graph. You can see there's different percentages and variations, right? 3 weeks out from the race, maybe you decrease your peak miles 75%. 2 weeks out, maybe you go to 60% in peak mileage. And on a race week, you decrease to 50% in peak mileage because obviously you're going to be doing your full marathon on that week. But as you can see with the taper, part of it is psychological as well to reduce the urge of doing way too much too soon, but also physical so you don't break down and end up getting an injury or just being stale because you just, spend all your energy like you treated that long run 3 weeks out for your race as a race itself. No, the idea is to show up fresh, recovered. You're not accumulating excessive fatigue. So recovery, where you actually get faster, a recovery mindset shift. You don't get faster during the workout. You get faster during the recovery from the workout, right? Training is equal stimulus plus recovery and adaptation. You skip recovery, you skip adaptation. Most runners, 40s and up, are under recovered. Not under trained, not because they're not running enough. Many runners will follow a running plan. They find it enjoyable, but they're not getting enough proper recovery. They're not doing the things outside of running to support their running. Again, running alone is a one-dimensional sport. So the recovery levers I recommend: sleep. This is probably the most powerful recovery tool. So many people are sleep deprived. That means you're sleeping less than 6 hours a night. If you're sleep deprived, your risk of injury actually increases by 36%. So make sure you get enough sleep, at least 7 hours a night or even more. Make sure you set the same sleep time and wake time Monday through Monday. I mean, 7 days a week, right? Don't just sleep differently because it's the weekend. So many people will lose. Oh, it's the weekend, I'm going to sleep differently. No. Set the same sleep hours, sleep schedule. And if you need to be, set an alarm to remind you to go to sleep. So many people have a hard time remembering to go to sleep at the same time. They get distracted. They end up staying up at night, watching Netflix, Hulu, reading the news, checking emails. No, turn that electronics off. Set the same schedule so you stay consistent with your sleep. Nutrition. Many times people don't eat enough. Make sure you're eating and drinking enough fluids. And we're going to talk about that in a bit. And then active recovery. Mobility is a big thing here to help your joints get mobile. There's a saying in the physical therapy world, motion is lotion, right? When you move things properly, that helps lubricate the joint. Obviously, you got to do the right movements. If you do the wrong movements, right, too much exercise could be a bad thing too. I'm not saying spend hours in the gym flaring yourself up, but doing the right, mobility work, muscle activation drills, dynamic warm-ups can actually improve your body. It's not about just being a couch potato and sitting. Like many people hear me talk about 3 runs per week. They think, oh, it's sit on the couch and do nothing the rest of the week. No, it's not about that. It's about being smart about your training, have enough time for recovery, but also doing the cross training, the mobility training, the strength training, so you're a well-rounded runner. Active recovery keeps the blood going, right? Circulation. And even if you're dealing with injury, doing some gentle movements can help get blood flow to the injured area. So let's talk about some nutrition guidelines, right? So hydration, aim to drink about 3 to 4 liters every day, which is about 96 to 128 ounces. If that seems like a lot, you could break it up. I say, okay, start your morning like a liter of water, and then I'll say lunchtime, another liter, and then around dinner time, or you could break it up like 2 smaller drinks, maybe snacks or whatever, have like a cup or cup and a half of water there too. Now, if plain water, you're not feeling hydrated, I'm a big fan of coconut water, but you could also add electrolytes to your water as well. Some people like adding some mineral salt or electrolyte packets. You could do that too, especially if you're a salty sweater or you feel like you're not properly hydrated with plain water alone. Or you could just simply add some salt to your water or to your meals as well to get some electrolytes, because sodium tends to be something, even though people are scared of it, obviously, if you have some high blood pressure, it could be problematic, right? Or if you already eat too much junk food, make sure you're eating healthy foods, because yes, junk food can already have high sodium. So you have to make sure you're already eating healthy, eating clean. If you already have really high salt in your diet, don't be adding more salt on top of that. Talk to a nutritionist if you're not sure, try to figure that out. But in general, make sure you're already eating clean. And then yes, if you need more like minerals and stuff, I'm a big fan of coconut water. Carbs, guidelines, right? Eat 3 to 4 grams of carbs for every pound you weigh, right? So if you're a 100-pound runner, that might be 300 to 400 grams of carbs every day. Now, if you're overweight or obese, all right, you might be like, wait, that's going to be way too much. It's going to maybe gain weight. And that might be the case. You should actually be working with a nutritionist or someone to help you figure out what's a proper eating routine for you, right? These are just general guidelines. This is for someone who's assuming is already healthy, training for a marathon. But if you're a complete beginner, maybe you're overweight or obese, you may have to work with a nutritionist or sports nutritionist to actually figure out, or a registered dietitian, to figure out what's a way you can eat healthy, but without also overdoing it and contributing to more weight gain. I've actually, unfortunately, I've seen people who are already overweight and start getting even more weight on top of that. Now, some weight gain is normal, by the way. Some weight gain is normal, but if you're gaining excessive weight while run training, it's going to make sense to actually work with a nutritionist to help dial this in, so you know exactly what you're eating and you're not overfueling or overeating either, right? There is a balance, right? You don't want to undereat. Of course, you don't want to undereat, and carbs are important, but I've also seen the pendulum where someone who's already overweight, it starts making themselves even more overweight because they're not sure what they're actually doing. Protein. A lot of runners don't eat enough protein. Make sure to eat anywhere from 0.65 to 1 gram per pound of protein for every pound you weigh. So let's say you're a 150-pound runner, that's 100 to 150 grams of protein daily. Again, if you're not sure if you're dealing with some medical conditions, again, work with an RD, a registered dietitian, or a sports nutritionist. Healthy fats. In general, you want to eat about 0.5 gram of fat for every pound you weigh. So let's say you're a 200-pound runner, that'd be about 100 grams of healthy fats every day, maybe avocados, nut seeds, butter, healthy butter like nut butter, peanut butter, almond butter, etc. And when racing, ensure that every hour, or let's say you're on a long run, you're consuming 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour. Now, if need be, some people who are running really fast or are going to spend a long time on their feet, maybe they're out there for like 3 hours on a long run, you might need to eat 90 grams of carbs per hour, like 60 to 90 grams per hour. And then make sure you're getting electrolytes, right? And that might be, some sodium, an electrolyte drink or beverage or a packet or, tabs or gels, anywhere from 300 to up to 600 milligrams of sodium per hour. And it could even be more in hotter humid environment. I've even seen some people who need 1,000 milligrams of sodium per hour if they're very salty sweater, they're running really fast or in a hot or humid environment. And then make sure you're hydrating and you're drinking from 16 to 24 ounces of fluid, or some people may even need a whole liter, right? 32 ounces. So signs you're under-recovered, right? Your resting heart rate's elevated, sleep quality's dropping, persistent soreness beyond 48 hours. Maybe you're irritable, unmotivated, dreading your runs. If your easy runs feel hard, you need more training, you need more recovery. So the deload protocol, right? Every fourth week, I recommend deloading. Maybe you decrease the volume 30%, keep one quality session, and let the body absorb. This is not lazy, this is strategic. And this is where the gains lock in. And for some folks that may say, hey, on a deload, just cut down to like 1 or 2 runs and then do cycling or cross-training, whether it's biking, swimming, walking, etc., to allow the body to deload and cross-training with like the bike. So let's talk about pain and performance, all right? Pain versus injury. Knowing the difference. Not every ache or pain is an injury, but not every injury starts as pain, right? Soreness, it could be start as soreness. It could be asymmetrical on one side or symmetrical on both sides. Sometimes it improves with movement, but things got in 48 hours. But sometimes the soreness keeps getting worse. And let's say you get soreness in your shins, then it starts becoming shin splints or a bone stress injury. So injury is a signal, right? You start maybe feeling sharp pain. It could pinpoint it. It could be on one side, but sometimes it could be on both sides. It could worsen with activity. It could persist. And if it changes to your gait, stop. If it's mild, and here's the pain traffic light guide. You see this pain scale: green light, yellow light, red light. Green light, it's like a 3 out of 10 pain or less, or 2 out of 10 pain or less. Right? Very mild pain goes away fairly quickly. A yellow light, it's like, where about 4 to 6 out of 10 pain, like let's say 5 out of 10 pain, moderate pain. This pain, man, you may, use some caution. Don't push it too much. Take it easy on the run. Maybe skip the hill workout. Swap it out for an easy run. Now, severe pains, like 7 and 8 out of 10 pain or more, right? You're looking at severe pain. This is a red light. Stop. Maybe consider taking a week off from running if it's really severe. Consulting with a healthcare professional, especially if it's causing you to limp or cause some swelling, right? Because you want to be smart about it. You don't want to ignore pain and potentially make it worse, and maybe it becomes like a stress fracture, something like that. You want to be smart about your training, right? And some of the most common injuries I see, whether it's runner's knee, IT band syndrome, shin splints, glute tendinopathy. Oftentimes these things are from too much too soon, right? Programming errors, right? Training mistakes. But then other mistake could be not doing proper strength training. And I talked about the strength training earlier. Sometimes when it comes to running knees, knee pain, you oftentimes have to strengthen your glutes, right? Your hips. You maybe have to strengthen your back as well, your core. Same thing with IT band syndrome. But then there's also mobility work. Many times you got to do proper mobility work, at least 10 minutes per day. It's not just doing one stretch for 30 seconds. It's actually repeating it. You might be doing it for 90 seconds, 2 minutes, right? Here I got 3 by 30. That means three rounds of 30 seconds of a calf stretch, right? Per side, right? So you're spending 90 seconds or more. And if you're very tight, you may have to repeat it even additional cycles. Let's say you have really tight ankles. You might be there like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, really mobilizing. You can see you have like different ankle variations, the gastro stretch, the soleus stretch, the plantar fascia stretch. And then hip flexors are very tight in runners as well. Now, I gave some guidelines here. You can see in the image. Your tight areas may vary. You might have different stiff or tight areas, but in general, a lot of runners tend to have tight ankles, hip flexors, quads. You may have to mobilize your upper back, your thoracic spine. You might have to do some thoracic rotation. You might have to stretch your lower back, lumbar spine. Your big toe may have to be stretched. I'm a big fan of also doing like deep squat mobility, because a deep squat can help address the hip, knees, and ankles at the same time. Or like a deep lunge with rotation. You can see that iliopsoas stretch. Again, there's some different samples and variations of types of mobility work that you may want to consider. But at the very least, doing 10 minutes per day, working your tight or stiff areas. And if you need to, have a morning routine and an evening mobility routine. It might be even 20 minutes per day if you're really serious about enjoying running for longevity and not being hurt. Right? Mobility is major here. So the rehab mindset, the key line is that rest removes stress, but rehab rebuilds your body's stability to handle the stress. If you get hurt during training, don't panic, but don't quit. Adjust, and if need be, get professional help. And then if you have to cross train, you can do aqua running, pool running, cycling, elliptical. The goal is not to stop hurting. The goal is to become strong enough to run again. So again, pain that doesn't improve on its own within like a week or so, pain that changes your running form, causes you to limp, causes swelling, catching or locking in the joint, recurring pain in the same spot. Maybe you keep getting the same recurring injury month after month. If you're in my world, right, you're going maybe close to your 40s, 50s, 60s, etc. Don't wait for 6 months. Like, oh, I'm gonna ignore the pain. I'm just gonna finish the marathon. No, early prevention, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? Get early treatment, right? Get help with this early is the difference between let's say a 2-week or 4-week fix versus having to take 6 months off to like rebuild and rehab and recover, right? Most of these injuries can actually recover in 2 to 3 months. I've actually helped people in 6 to 8 weeks actually rapidly improve their condition, get rid of pain, get rid of injury when they catch it enough early. But if it's a chronic condition, we're looking at 3 months, 6 months or more that's really chronic and severe. That's why it's very important to catch these things early and be proactive versus instead of waiting till the last minute or like, oh, the marathon race is a week away. At that point, you may have to defer the race or resort that you're going to be hurting if you force yourself to, finish a whole marathon. So now we're going to talk about a plan, right? What does a 16-week beginner marathon training plan look like? So I put one together. This is for someone who's kind of running for like 445, 430 marathon. You can see this 3 run per week framework. You can see the weeks here. If you want to pause this, you can take a screenshot. You can see I got Monday rest mobility, Tuesday easy run, Wednesday strength training plus, let's say, cross training for like 30 minutes, maybe on the bike. Thursday, a quality run. Maybe it's 4 by 1 minute intervals. You repeat that. You have a warm up. You have a cool down. Friday, rest mobility. Saturday, cross training. And then long run, maybe go for like a 6 mile long run. You can see how it progresses. All right, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then boom, have a deload, right? 1, 2, 3, weeks 1, 2, 3, ramp up. Week 4, deload, and then we ramp up again, right? Week 5, boom, ramping up, then deload, then ramp up. And then we got to the long run, then taper down, and then marathon build, right? You could see here. I know there's some typos in the infographic. Like, hey, Ray, there's a typo in the graphic. Yes, there's some typos in the infographic, but you get the general framework here, right? You have a general framework of what the 3 runs per week schedule and how you would pair that with the strength training and cross training and mobility work. Again, I still recommend doing mobility work daily, but I know some people prefer to space it out, especially with the strength training and the cross training. All right, and then as far as cross training goes, if you're a complete beginner, you can just walk. Or if you're more intermediate runner, you might want to do an incline walk. Or if you're more advanced, you may even do weighted walking. I like a rucking, which is but you're like a rucksack or a weighted vest. Or you could just go biking. Some people just prefer biking. You could do biking. You could do biking at zone 3 or different intensities for biking for your cross training. You could swim, right? I like to think of a triathlete. A lot of triathletes will oftentimes They'll run, they'll bike, they'll swim. And I also like to, let me also, as a side note, bring up triathletes, because many people are like, oh, you can't train for a marathon 3 runs per week. Actually, Ironman triathletes, where they do a full marathon as part of their event, an Ironman triathlon, will often only just run 3 days per week, bike 3 days per week, swim 3 days per week, and then adequately be able to finish a full marathon and finish in a pretty respectable time, like under 4 hours, 3 hours, with just 3 runs per week. And yes, they're doing lots of volume because they're also doing biking 3 days a week. They're doing swimming 3 days per week. Because when you cross train, you also build up your aerobic fitness. And this is something for some whatever reason, many people who just run alone don't appreciate that you could build up your aerobic fitness by doing, biking and swimming as well. And also walking can build up, if you're a beginner, walking can build up your aerobic fitness as well. You can build up your time on your feet. And then strength training 2 to 3 times per week. And if a run feels too hard, you could always swap it out for an easy run or a run walk. Again, if you're a complete beginner, you might do a run walk. A protocol might be a run for 2 minutes, walk for a minute. Right? There's different variations. If you want to do, you could check up some of my other YouTube videos where I talk about the run walk method, or you could just research run walk method. You'll see different run walk programs for a full marathon. But in general, I do recommend at least 16 weeks. But if you're a beginner, 18 weeks or even 20-week marathon build. So the big takeaway is that marathon training doesn't have to break you. It's not about just running more days of the week, more miles. It's about running smarter, getting stronger, and recovering like it's part of your training, because it is. And you can finish a full marathon, 26.2 miles, without having to do high mileage, without having running to be like a full-time job, taking up, running every day of the week, without having to get burnt out, and without having to become getting injured, then becoming a patient, having to go see the orthopedist in town with a physical therapist. I've seen it hundreds of times when runners take the smart approach and realize that, you don't have to train like a professional runner. You don't have to be an Olympic runner, right? You could train smart, train like a well-rounded athlete, run, cross train, strength training, mobility work. You can show up to race day. So I currently have 2 spots open to work with me. Once one for private coaching. This is where I give you a personalized plan to help you train for your marathon, or even a half marathon as well, whatever race you're training for, around these pillars that I talked about. I'm both a physical therapist and a run coach. So if you're interested, there's a link to plan in the description, and here's a link here. You can check it out. The book a free consult. We can lay out the roadmap to help you train, run pain-free, train for longevity. And if you just want to check out my free training plans or other tips and resources, you can check out my free school community for runners called Running Pain Free in School. Link in the description, in my YouTube description. So if you found this helpful, smash that like button, drop a comment, and hit the subscribe. And if you want to leave a comment, you can let me know what's holding you back when you're running, whether you train for a marathon, half marathons, or some other distance. Okay. And I'll see you on the next one.